Shihan, thank you very much for coming to Masters Magazine.
Sir.
I really appreciate your time, that you took the time to come down and visit us today.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
I've been trying to get with you for a very long time. Well, you know, in God's time, as we said.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So, I'd like to hear a little bit about your background. And the audience would love to know, you know, from your beginnings. I know you were in acting for many years and still are, and martial arts for a long time. So maybe we can begin a little bit about your childhood and the neighborhood and where you grew up and how you evolved into this gentleman that we know, that we see here today.
Wow. That is a mouthful there. I'm born in the Bronx. And if you saw the movie A Bronx Tale, when they did Arthur Avenue during that time and Mount Carmel Church and all that, that's the neighborhood that the movie was portraying. I grew up on that block, in that neighborhood at that time. My father used to shine shoes in front of Mount Carmel Church when he was like 10 or 12 years old or something out there. So that's how long we've been in the Bronx. Grandma, right from Italy to the Bronx. Very safe. Women and children can walk the streets at night. There's no crime. There was no crime on our blocks. You know? Everybody knew what was what. Everybody, you're welcome to come to the neighborhood, have a good time, go to the restaurants, enjoy yourself, have some magnificent food, go visit the market. Don't come down to start anything. It's the wrong block to come looking for trouble. At that time in the Bronx, obviously, when I was a kid, we had this little situation in front of my house, and where my father happened to be outside. My sister and I took a little walk down the street to the candy store. You know, it was always a candy store back then. And it was only maybe a half a block away, and it was no big thing. We was maybe 5. I was like 5, 6, something like that. And as we're walking back, some guy tried to grab us. And he goes, you know, give me them yo-yos, kids. And then he was trying to grab us. And it was starting to look like a kidnapping situation, like they were going to grab us. And next thing you know, we're walking up by my father. Now, if anybody knows anything about my father, you guys must understand. My father's name was Bonaventura Cecere. The guy, you know, people think that I'm a big guy because I'm 250 and I'm 6 foot. My father was 315 pounds. He wore a 62 jacket. He had wrists like my legs. You got to figure this guy is a beast. So, and he didn't have a father. So when his father died when he was very young. So he was raised in the street. So obviously that's the kind of man that raised me, this Brahma Bull gorilla from the neighborhood that came out of the street. So we're walking by, and this guy's trying to grab him. My dad says, hey kids, go in the house. And I'm like, oh my God, what, you know, we're kids, we don't know. We run inside, we go upstairs, but I was saying, I could hear from my father's voice, this ain't gonna be good. And we come out and we look over the deck, and there's my father saying to this guy, so, you like to mess with kids, huh? And he gives this guy an open hand slap. I mean, if his grandfather, the old country, didn't feel it, there was no justice. You understand what I'm saying? He spun this guy around. And then he goes up behind it, and if I ever see you on this block again, he's slapping this guy down the street. Don't ever come back on this block again, and stay away from the kids. And I thought to myself, my God, I never seen violence. This is the first time I ever seen violence. Yeah. Fast forward a few other times, I go to work with my father, you know, carrying his box, and I watch my father get into other altercations where my father was a very proud man. He would work. He'd go home, he raised his family. Well, he ain't taking nobody's crap. And he was going to do it his way. And I don't think you could be the president of the United States. Good luck. Anyway, I see my father a few other times put hands on guys that were, as I was growing up as a young man, this is what molded me. Like, you watch people who talk with respect and how they get respect back. You watch people who think they're powerful talk with disrespect, and a real powerful guy reminds them what power is. And that was what my father would do. He'd slap you back into reality when you were ungentlemanly, you know?
You mentioned one lesson that you learned from him, and he wasn't even really directing it directly to you. He was telling your mother.
Yeah, I was bullied. I think a lot of martial artists were bullied or have a similar story because that's what drives us to becoming better and not being victimized. So I think I was about 12, and these kids were making sport of me for several weeks. And they catch me, I think it was 3 o'clock, 3:15 or something, when the bus dropped us off, and then I got to go a couple of blocks to my house. And these kids, the minute they drop us off, they jump on me at the bus stop and chase me all the way to my house. And they did this for a couple of weeks, and it became like a, everybody's going to chase Vinny thing. So the one time, this was a Friday, the one kid, they gave me a good beating, these kids, and my face was all busted up. My eye was swollen. And I was at home, very upset in my room. I remember slamming myself around going, I don't understand why these kids are attacking me. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm a nice guy. I don't do anything wrong. Why does everybody want to hurt me? And my father comes home, and I hear my mother say, when are you going to go down there? Because remember, I already told you who my father was. When are you going to go down there and straighten out these parents and grab them for what their kids are doing to your son? And my father said, this kid's going to learn one way or another that the world is not a nice place, and that he's going to have to stand up and fight his own battles, and that's going to be for the rest of his life. His father can't go do it for him, and that's a lesson he's going to have to learn right away. And when I heard that, this is something that I keep today when I work with kids in the martial arts. You must unlock the mentality of why you're doing what you're doing. Otherwise, they're confused about self-defense. As soon as he told me I was going to have to keep taking a beating, my mind was like, what, are you kidding me or what? So, and again, you're just a kid. So now this is Monday. We come back to Monday. I get on the bus. I'm coming back. It's 3 o'clock. I get off the bus. We're off to the races again. It's pick on Vinny hour. So Vinny goes running, and they chase Vinny. And then all of a sudden, I just remember my father's words halfway when I was running. You're going to keep doing this? You're going to keep running from these guys until you fight them? I just turned around, I stopped, and it kind of bewildered the kid when he ran up to me because he was like, hey, wait, he stopped. And then I just punched this kid right in the mouth. One shot. And I'll never forget, it was the first time I ever hit someone. And he had what they call a sugar tooth, the brown, when you see a guy's got a brown tooth, they call it a sugar tooth. I knocked it out. My first shot, he swallowed it. And he started crying like a little girl. And then the other guys who were with him, they started running, and they all ran away now. And I sat there going, are you kidding? Really? You know how much energy I wasted running from these guys when all I had one shot and lay this kid down? That mentality carried me until today. A bully's like a balloon. You pop him real good, he goes away.
Well, tell us a little bit about your passions before you got into the martial arts.
Okay, I always knew I was going to be an actor. From as soon as I could have any conscious thought, I used to sit in front of TV and watch it. And my mother used to say, your friends are sitting at the side waiting for you, and I'd be watching movies. And she would say, but Vinny, you got your friends outside, go. You can always come back and watch a movie. I said, Ma, I don't care. I'm watching a movie. I don't care. Let them wait. Let them go play. I want to watch the movies. And so I always knew what I was going to do. And always moving towards the acting world. Started at 17. I'm a little older than that right now, so I've had a few years in there. And the acting and the pursuit of it, as you know, when you're a young actor, you're not going to make money unless you actually get lucky and get right off. I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in Manhattan. And that's an old house. I wrote a book called Book of Vinnyisms, and it talks about really the spiritual. We really can't connect what happens as I'm explaining it now, I see the back process. But when you're living it then, you don't have anything to judge by. You don't have any,
reference.
Exactly. You have no reference. So in that, you're trying to figure out, you got to make a living, you got to do this, you got to do that. And I remember I was going to New York, American Academy of Dramatic Arts. I wanted to go to school because Spencer Tracy went there, and Princess Grace and some other people, Robert Redford. These were all great graduates of the school. And one thing I'd always learned is if you were trained as a stage actor, classically trained, you can then take that anywhere. But you can't be trained for film and then be a stage actor. That doesn't work. So I took the route of formal training at the academy. Well, when I went, they turned me down. And they told me I couldn't even, they wouldn't even give me an audition. And I was like, I don't understand. This is American Academy of Dramatic Arts. I want to, and this is what I want to do. They said, yeah, but look at where you came from. Look at your transcripts. You're not our kind of people. You're not going to make it in this. And you know, when you're a kid, 17, and you drop, we went from New York. Then after the kidnapping thing, we went to Florida, and then at 17, I went back to New York to go to Academy on my own. And then I got shut out. My Uncle Tony gets me a job working at a place called Pasta Prega d'Italiano on 61st and 1st. Next to the New York Hilton. I'm working there and I'm wearing a white coat. It was owned by a New York detective. My uncle connected me with him to give me a job. I think I was making $1 an hour. You're bringing, they got all different sauces. $5.95. You get a pasta, you put a thing, and I'm serving meatballs and thing. I got that stuff all over me, and every day while I'm in New York, when I go, I'm living at the moment, I'm back in Astoria at the moment, living there. I'm going to St. Patty's Cathedral, light my things, do my prayers. Every time I pass, I go in there, God, I'm going to do everything right. I'm going to make this happen. I trust in my destiny. Now I'm over there with the meatballs and they're doing this thing, and I'm looking at God like, really? I come all this way for this? Really? I can't believe that this could happen to me when I just have so much faith in who you are and what's happening. And the next thing you know, me and another Greek guy who lived in Astoria, if anybody knows anything about Astoria, it's full of Greeks. I had a Greek guy, we're walking from the restaurant on the way home. We're passing it looks like an Irish pub. Remember, I'm only 17, I'm not even supposed to be in there. It's a steakhouse Irish pub. And there's a little neon sign that says open. It's got the green awning like a Greenblatt's, but no signs, just open. And I thought, how strange. This is on 57th Street. And we're walking up to 59th and Lex, where you're going to take the double R and go over the bridge. As I'm walking, this was one of the very first times I had this kind of thing happen to me. And I didn't understand it at all because it was new. It reminded me when I was taking the beatings and I didn't understand it. Something stopped me in front of this door. And my friend keeps walking. I mean, we just walked half a block. We're walking, and all of a sudden I stop. And I look. And I can't walk. And my friend keeps walking. He says, what's the matter? I said, I have to go in here. And he says, go in, that's a bar, right? Steakhouse bar. You can't go, you're not belonging there. You don't even drink. What are you talking about? You're 17. I said, listen, I've had some things in my life happen. People would call it divine intervention, whatever you want to put a name on it. But I've had some surreal things happen, and I understand how my particular mechanism works. It may not work for you, it may not work for him, but I know how God's mechanism works for me. And when he tells me to do something, he does not let me divert from that till it's done. And no matter what you try to do, it's not going to go right until you do what you're supposed to do. This I have already learned at 17. Mm-hmm. So now I say, you go home, I'm going to go in here. He says, you know what, whatever this is, I'll go in with you just to see. Val, I tell you, when I opened that door, may the Lord strike me dead right here in the studio right now if I'm even slightly exaggerating. That man looked me right in the eyes when I opened the door, and I saw one face in this whole place, like I'm talking to you now, lit. He looks right at me and goes, and it was like a download hit me. I knew what to do. And I walked right over to the guy's table. And he goes, hey, how you doing? Why don't you sit down? My friend's at the door like this. What? I'll put yourself in this. What the hell's going on here? I'm sitting down with, well, I'll tell you who he is in a minute. Uh-huh. I'm sitting down with this guy, and I start just cutting it up with him. How you doing? Oh, my God, I love you. Oh, yeah. And I get him and his wife laughing. He introduced me to his wife. And they start laughing at the table. And he says, kid, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm an actor. I came to get trained. I come, and my heart was set on going to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, but they wouldn't even take me for an interview. I said, so I got to go, rethink that. But that's what he goes, you got talent. You're a very funny guy. You're very talented. You should do something with that. I said, well, like I said, I wanted to get trained. I went to the academy, but they won't take me, so I got to rethink my whole training. He goes, I'm going to give you your first acting piece of advice. Never take no for an answer. Never take no for an answer, because in the acting world, you're going to get 100 no's before you get a yes, and then you're going to get your yes. So never take no for an answer. I said, oh, okay. I said, well, you would know. And he goes, I think you should go back and try to get into that school if that's where your heart's set on it. I said, well, okay. Well, you didn't see them. They were pretty upset. You didn't see the look on their face when they read my transcript. So I said, thank you. And I go. And my friend is like, I can't believe what you just did. And I'm still not telling you who he is yet, because I want to share it with you. I get up in the morning. I told you I got uncles. Tony P. I get up. I have breakfast with Tony P. in the morning. And I tell him, wow, what a great night I had last night. I was all upset. And the next thing you know, I said, I met Conrad Bain, the father on Different Strokes. This was 1986, when he was the #1 show in the world with the little kid, Different Strokes. #1 show on television. #1 guy. So he's like, wow, that's pretty great, kid, way to go. I said, but I don't understand. I don't get it. God, you bring me all this way, but where's the payoff? I mean, there was something went on there. Yeah, and then I told him the story. And I said, but I don't understand where the payoff is. Well, he told you to go back to the school, didn't he? I said, oh, come on. I said, Uncle Tony, them guys, they really, really, really are not our cut of fabric. They don't want me there. And he goes, and this is how the wise guy mentality is. All these guys, they always got that weird, they got that weird street wisdom that always makes sense. So he says, so what you're telling me is that you know better than a guy who's got a #1 show on television, but you know better than him, and you're not going to go back. I said, no, I didn't say I know better than him. He said, so you're going to go back? I said, of course I'm going to go back. Of course I'm going back. I'm going back on Monday. And this is my book of videos. So here's the end. I go back to the school. There's the same people that didn't. And I'm sure, my friend, that you have been in a place that you never wanted to walk back in that room again in your life, just because of that feeling. You did not want to face this. But I did it anyway. I walked in. I said, I'd like to speak to somebody about enrolling. And I'm so meek. And they're like, what's your name? And I'm like, I says, Vince Cecere? And they're like, I'm sorry, what was that? And I'm like, Vince Cecere? And they're like, Vince Cecere, okay, did you have, oh. And I'm like, oh shit, what's the O? She goes, could you stay here a minute? And she takes off and runs upstairs. Guys, I grew up in the street. When somebody says, oh, after they told you not to come back, usually two guys named Louie and Vinny come down with a bat and make you leave. So I'm like, okay, where'd she go? Here it comes. Here it comes. Get ready to run. Where's the exits in this joint? Where's the exits in this? So now, the dean comes down, walks up to me and goes, Mr. Cecere, how are you? And shakes my hand like this. And you talking to me or somebody walk in this room? Oh. He goes, I understand that you want an audition. I said, wait, ooh. I said, yeah, but I came here like a month ago. And you guys told me I wasn't eligible to even audition. I said, well, we got a call on your behalf. I said, you got a call on my behalf? I don't know nobody here. I don't know anybody in this academy. And he says, well, we got a call from Mr. Conrad Bain. Wow. And he said, if you were to come back, you were to be given a shot. So now me being Italian, I don't want it. Wait a minute. You're telling me because this guy made a phone call, now I can get an audition, but my talent alone and who I was enough to walk in here wasn't good enough in the first place for you people? So he says, I didn't say we're letting you in. We're giving you an audition. You still got to have talent. Uh-huh. We're giving you an opportunity. And I said, oh, so that's all. I got a little sarcasm because I was,
Yeah.
And I said, well, sorry, I says, so let me, just so I get my head around this. Any guy that's on television could call this prestigious academy and get somebody in here. Doesn't really matter. He said, no, first off, you have to audition like I told you. Second off, Mr. Bain is not just anybody. Ready for this one? He's the chairman of the board of alumni of the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. You're going to tell me that the good Lord did not put me with that guy. You tell me that that's not divine intervention in a city that's got 12 million people, and I walk into the one guy that can turn the screw, and you tell me God doesn't have his hands on that. You tell me there's no God. You know what? You can go sell that someplace else because you're talking to the wrong guy. And that's one out of, I got 20 stories like that, where God just put his hands and these great things happen. That's why I'm so grateful, and I thank everybody for so much. I mean, 3 near-death experiences, I'm still here.
So you're around 17 and still no martial arts, no thinking of martial arts, no idea of what it is, or so how did the martial arts come about?
Well, I was going to be in the American Academy for 2 years. I did get accepted. I did go, and I landed a movie called Prizzi's Honor. And you remember that one?
Yes.
That was Jack Nicholson. It was a wonderful cast. Angelica Houston and William Hickey, the grand teacher of HB Studios, everybody's legend. It's like Gene LaBella of the acting world, right? I got on this movie and I went and I told my acting teacher, I was so excited that I got cast. And I said, look, I got a job in Prizzi's Honor. I'm going to be filming next week. They said, no, you're not. I said, what do you mean, no, I'm not? The casting director, Sylvia Fay, told me I'm going to be on the set next week in Brooklyn. He said, you're not allowed to take an acting role. I said, I'm not allowed to take an acting role. What am I doing in acting school if I'm not allowed to take an acting role? Are you kidding me or what? What are you doing over here? And he says, you cannot take a professional role until you've completed your training. And we at the Academy we don't do that. We don't endorse. You're not allowed to go out and work until you've graduated. You can't go take a role. I said, what happens if I take this role? You're telling me? He said, if you take this role, you will not be invited back. I said, I don't understand. I don't understand that. You're an acting academy. Do you know, and you and I both know this, somebody may get that one chance, and you're asking them to pass on it, and that may be the one chance, that the only chance he ever had, and they passed on it because you said he couldn't do it. He said, that's our policy. I said, okay, all right. I did the role. I went, I'll never forget, I had a bar tuxedo. I'm changing on the L on the train on the way over there. I get to Our Lady of Prospect, and I take this role. And Val, this is for like $50 as an actor for some extra work, right? But it was the first job. It was something.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in a church, in the back of a church, Our Lady of Lebanon Church in Prospect Avenue, Brooklyn. And on this side is all cops, and on that side is all wise guys. Remember in the movie, it was gangsters and cops. So I'm all the way in the back. And there's a guy talking to me about, he knows everything about everybody. He knows every actor. That's Jack Nicholson, that's and he's telling me everything. And I called this guy Mr. Statistician, because he reminds me of a guy that knows everything but can't do nothing. You know, those kind of guys in the martial arts. They can tell you every weapon in the world, but they don't know how to use one. They can't fight their way out of a bag. So this guy's talking. I said, me, okay, well, I get it. I understand who's here. Next thing you know, the guy's walking around, Val, he's walking around, he goes like this. I said to him, what's this guy looking at? Why is he looking at us like this? He said, no, he's looking at everybody. I said, yeah, but for what? He said, you know what? They're probably looking for filler or getting somebody to complete some look that they're looking for. And I go, what? So then he comes by. He still doesn't find any valve. He goes by like this, and when his eyes meet me again, he goes like this, and he goes like that. I go, what are you looking at? Guy stops. He goes, you, come here. And I said to myself, oh shit, there goes my $50. This guy's gonna throw me out because I asked him what you're looking at. He comes over to me and he says, say something. I said, something. He goes, you're great. Put him in the front. And he puts a carnation on me. They put me in the front row in the wedding, sitting right next to, my arms resting against Bobby Loggia. Jack Nicholson sitting behind me. John Huston sitting where your camera is. And I'm like, that's John Huston. And I look back, and Jack's just looking, right? And I go like this. You're going to find all through my life I've done these things. I don't know where it comes from, but it always works out okay. I turn, I look at Jack, and I go, Jack? It's like, hi. So now the lighting goes out. They got to change the set. And there is John Huston sitting in his director's chair. This was his very last picture that he directed. And his daughter was the co-star. John had emphysema so bad, he was talking from a wireless mic using, it was the first time I ever saw a director use a remote looking, instead of actually being behind the camera. It was the first time I saw a remote, if you remember, that many years ago, Prissy Summer. So as he's sitting there, as they're changing everything around, I guess if you were starving and you were to look at a smorgasbord, you'd have a certain kind of look on your face, like, I had that kind of look when I looked at John Huston, because I was in amazement. That's John Huston. He played God. He's the voice of God. You know what I mean? Noah. As I'm staring at him, he goes like this. And I go, and I'm like, wow, John Huston just waved at me. I'm such a nerd. At this point, I'm so excited over every little thing. And he goes, oh. And I get up and I walk over there and I go, sir? He goes, how you doing? I said, I'm doing great, sir. He goes, you enjoy what you do? I said, I love this. I would do this for the rest of my life. He goes, oh my God, it's John Huston. And he goes, I'm going to give you a piece of advice if you're going to be an actor. No drugs, no booze, no chicks, no gambling. I did all of it. He says, keep acting, you got a good look. And that was John Huston.
Yeah.
Who gets that? So now I'm walking back to holding. I'm already on cloud 9. Can you imagine? I'm like, yeah. I said, and the Academy, they didn't want me to do this. And I got to meet John Huston, Jack. They didn't want me to be here. That's where you go, when I first learned not to listen to people. And then, as I'm walking back, this beautiful woman with this long blondish hair, wearing a lavender top and a black skirt, what's about here, leather skirt, is walking about a step behind me as we're walking back to Holden. And I see these camera guys, like paparazzi guys, coming around taking pictures of me and her, and I think to myself in my naivete, oh, they heard about my upgrade. They're getting pictures of me. You're thinking how important you are, you know what I mean? And like, again, this is a naivete moment, but it's out of pure ignorance of innocence. I says to the woman, again, like earlier I told you about Lutz with it, I says to the woman, I said, come on, get in the pictures with me. I said, I just got upgraded. I'll get in the pictures. Come on, get some. And she smiles like this, and she goes, I said, you're in the movie, right? And she goes, yes, I have a little part. And I said, yeah. I said, I just got upgraded. I'm playing Cheech Pritchie. Who are you? And she goes, I'm Kathleen Turner. See the look I'm giving you right now? When she said that to me, I thought I got hit with a salami in the head. I'm looking around like this. I go, okay, say it. She goes, what, dear? I go, idiot. She goes, no, come here. And she gives me a hug. And we start walking about. I said, I'm sorry. I'm just so excited. My first thing. I said, my God, I had never seen Romance in the Stone. I had never seen Body Heat yet. I didn't know who she was. And we walked back to holding, and then, where extras go to a holding tent and principals got their trailers. They're shooting the cover. Remember, the cover was a machine gun heart shape,
yeah,
with the two of them with the glasses in the hand. They were shooting that on the side for the two of them dressed like that, and they were shooting it in that holding area where the principals were. And as I walked up, they told me, no, you got to go over there. And Kathleen looked back and said, no, let Vinny come in. So I got to go in there and do that. And if you watch the movie, Prizzi's on it, okay? She requested me to do the Tarantella with her.
Wow.
Before the little kid comes up. So I got to dance a Tarantella with Kathleen Turner in Prizzi's honor. All because of being naive and just open.
Open, yeah.
And trusting God. Just trusting God. Trust Him. He got you. The family had a newspaper called the Tribune, Coconut Creek Tribune. The Hard Rock Casino is on one side of the Sample Road in 441, and across the other side was a nightclub that they had. And the nightclub was this first-class club that they put in with ice sculptures and carvings, and I mean, the amount of decor that went in there, it's like something out of Studio 51 or something like that, 54, whatever it is. I went in there, and for the paper, I saw that guy, a center page ad. I sent him I said, look, you're going to open your club, we'll do a center page, we'll be over a grand opening, we'll take pictures, we'll promote it. You know how they do.
Yeah.
And then we'll give you the back cover for so many weeks until your club takes off. I was already in that other life, working for the fellas. So that's how, when I came to this is how the story meshes. When I took the club, when I went over there, they bounced a check on me for $1,200. So I went back in to get the money. And it turns out that guy bounced checks on everybody. So as I'm talking to the owner, I said, you know, what the heck? He said, oh, my partner, he goes, I said, how much money you got in here? He told me. And I realized some guy's robbing him, because I know the club business. And the money just didn't jive in the kind of money he spent. So he told me about his partner and all this stuff. And he told me the mob is squeezing him and all these stuff. So I said, it sounds to me like somebody's taking you for a ride. I said, first off, tell me, what did the mob come and say to you? And then he told me, oh, they put an M80 on the door and threatened me. He said they put a bomb on the door. I said, a bomb. I said, I said, whatever you're saying right now is complete bullshit. Sorry. And he says, no, not a bomb. They put an M80, taped it on the door. I said, listen to me. I think your problem is you went out on a cruise and you signed 2 pages full of checks and you left all that money in account for your partner. You got a double thing. Your partner has made deals probably with a bunch of different people and he's robbing you blind. Okay, he's double tapping you. I'm telling you, this guy's double tapping you, especially since I didn't get paid and all these other people. Where's the money? So he says, you really think he's doing this? I said, tell me about this guy. So I do my homework on him. And I tell him, oh, this guy's definitely robbing you. He goes, well, we can't say anything because he's connected. I said, oh, you can't. I said, tell the guy you found an investor that's going to come bring big money into the club because I want to take his concept across. Remind you how he found this guy. The guy inherited $2.5 million from his grandfather. He goes to church, makes a big donation in church, in a Baptist church in Coral Springs. The freaking pastor tells everybody, thank you so much for Mr. Easterbrook for putting in so much money. This gang jumps right on him and tells him, you should be in the nightclub business. I can make you $100,000 a night. Da, 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 da. Oh, I don't know nothing about the nightclub business. Oh, yeah, he plays, you know, he's a scammer. He takes him on his own dime to Chicago to where he knew a guy in the club and he makes him think he's going to build this great big club. So this is the whole setup. And once he got him all the way hooked in, then he brought the mob in. Now we can't back out because the mob is this and the mob is that. Now I understand the whole game. Tell the guy you got a fresh money coming in and I'm going to come here. So now the guy shows up with the brand new Jaguar and his beautiful little sweater with his thing, right? And I says, hey, how you doing? Yeah, so you're such a, yeah. I said, yeah, you guys got a lot of nice joint here. I really like to take it. I said, let me ask you something. But I understand you're having a problem with somebody. So, we're going to be able to get rid of this problem or what? So he mentions a name. It's my friend. The name he uses is my friend. And I go, really? He goes, yeah, he told me, if you forget about it, we don't come up with this money. We got a real problem. I said, no. Okay, I said, you know what? Let me get my finances together. I'm gonna come, I'll make a deposit. You definitely don't want problems with these guys. So now we make another meeting. I call him, guy on the phone in New York. I said, come down here. I got a guy using your name, making money on you. He goes, you got a guy using my fucking name. I said, yeah, while he's robbing another guy. Oh, maybe it's time I come to Florida. Yeah, come down to Florida. He comes down. I tell the guy I got the check from, come on. You know how fast he got there because he knew the check was there. That guy shows up. I said, hey, I want to introduce you to some of my partners. And I goes, but I think you already know one of them. He goes, really? I said, yeah, this is such and such. He turned white, man. I said, I thought you knew him. Because you used his name on me. Petrified. This is this guy and my uncle. The two of them are there. They grab this guy, they take him in the bathroom. Whose club is this? It's your club. That's right. If we ever see you again, we'll never see you again. The guy's running for his life now. Out the front door. Tripping on shit all the way out the door. He jumps in the Jaguar and takes off. The old man comes out and says, so, 50% of this club is Vinny's, and you're his partner. And that's how I took over the club.
But still no martial arts.
So, during the time the club was open, is when my martial arts started. That's how I got a lot of the guys that worked, actually, from the dojo. They were halfway in between when I was at the club the first year. The guy got stabbed. Guy came in, the fight started over there. He walked into place. Next thing you know, a guy walks up, stabs this guy right through the side of the neck with a knife. Whoa! On stage, blood goes everywhere. All my bouncers, everybody freaks out. People are screaming. I'm armed. I got my piece. I've got a CCW since I'm 21, constantly. I'm armed. I come out. I see this, everybody's running, and I'm looking for my bouncers. And they run, they ran. So the guy stabbed him, he jumps on stage, he starts running, swinging a knife, and I just ran at him, and we knocked the guy down, like hit him, knocked him down, and I stepped on his arm. That's all I knew, and the knife came out. Today I would say to myself, you're a real idiot for what you did, because you put yourself in real risk. My option was to shoot him. But how are you going to shoot him unless you sign the club over to your family? Yeah. Just give the club away if you shoot the guy. And what are you, Wyatt Earp? You got 1,200 people in the room. You're going to shoot something? You can't shoot a guy. You know, you can't. Anyway, but he's stabbing somebody. So anyway, we get the guy, we take him, get him arrested. The guy didn't die, the band leader. And then the very next day, I went looking to learn how to take a knife away from a guy the right way. Because I realized I was in harm's way. I didn't know how to deal with that. Even though I could have did it this way, that wasn't the proper way and it couldn't be done. So I realized limitations of firearms. So then I went to, I had a bartender that had taken some ninjutsu, and I asked him, I said, I need to go study some kind of martial arts and learn how to take a knife away. And he goes, well, I did a little ninjutsu. He goes, I said, why don't you look around and see if you can find a school, something that's a combative school or some sort, so I can learn this. And I was already boxer. I was already, tough enough kid, but this is something else.
Yeah.
And then the very first day I went down to, he found a place. We jumped on a motorcycle, rode down to Hollywood, Florida, walked into a dojo. It was a Temiru Jiu-Jitsu. It was Grandmaster Phil Chinique and then Shihan Leone Velasquez, who's now Grandmaster Velasquez. Leo's like my brother. So Leo was there, he was teaching, and I saw, when I walked in, he said, how may I help you guys? I never seen a gi, what are these guys doing in pajamas? And I saw him throwing these guys all around, and I said, look, guy comes in my joint, stabs a guy in the neck. I want to make sure that doesn't happen to me. How can I prevent that? I want to learn. So I didn't know what an uki was. I didn't know what a tanto was. I didn't know what any of this. He goes, us, come. Grab a tanto, and both of you, come. And you come for me. And then all of a sudden he's like, beep, pop, 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 puts these guys down. He's got them trapped. He's got their weapons, and they're eating, like he was eating cornflakes. You know? I'm like, get out of here. Get out of here. That boy, yeah, come on. That ain't going to work. Right? So I said, give me the knife. I did. I said, do it to me. Let me come at you, and you do that to me. And then when Leo tells the story, he goes, you must understand, I don't know who this guy is. And he's this big New Yorker guy. He just did the Mr. Florida, whatever it was. And the level 3 show, go for Mr. Florida qualified. And I was 250 pounds, and I was shredded weak. And I walked into the dojo, wanted to learn how to fight. And then I said, here, take the knife from me. And this big guy's going to come with a knife. So from his perspective, he's like, shit, I got to be on. And he did, man. He disarmed me and put me down and controlled me where I had no choice. And that moment of truth rang in my spirit. Like, this is how you fight. And I enrolled the next day. And I hired Shihan to be head of my security and fired all the guys. I fired everybody that night. I came to LA and I started, when I first started, okay, it was a good martial arts story. I first started, Uncle Mike is out there in Murrieta. Mm-hmm. Not Murrieta, what it was, the other one where the casino is, where the big Pachanga casino is, what do you call that? Temecula. Got a house in Temecula. When I first came, I sold everything that I owned, and I bought an F-150, put a topper on it. If it didn't fit in the truck, I wasn't taking it, and I was going from East Coast to West Coast with me and my wife. Boom, we go. We get there, Uncle Mike stay at his house for about 3 weeks while we're coming into town every week looking for apartments. I get a free week at like a 24-hour fitness or something out in Temecula. And while I'm out there, I start working on a bag, and the guy says to me, "Are you a martial artist?" I said, "Yes, I am." Now I'm a knee down at this time. I said, "Yes, I am. I teach XYZ." So I said, "I'll tell you what, because you've been so gracious and you gave me a week, or 3 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever it was, I'll give a free seminar to all your instructors. I'll teach all the instructors. You guys, why don't you show up on Saturday, bring all your trainers in, and I'll teach you guys some jiu-jitsu." And he was like, "Oh, that's great." So next thing I know, my Uncle Mike doesn't know anything about my skill level or what I do, and he's a Marine, okay? We're in the place, the seminar's coming, and this grunt walks in wearing split-toe ninja boots, carrying a black gear duffel bag, weapons bag, right? All dressed in black like a ninja, shaved head, right? Carrying the bag, and walks in. I know everybody in the room. I don't know him. I don't know where this guy came from. So I'm introducing myself, and I look on and I said, "Sir, are you joining us?" And he goes, "Yes." And I said, "And you are?" And he goes, "I am Professor such a I have a 3rd degree I have a 4th I have a 3rd I'm a makaka, and I work for the Marines, and I'm a campaign." He told all this stuff. My Uncle Mike's like, "Oh shit, why'd this guy show up?" And I said, "So what are you doing here?" And he says, "My student said I should come and see if you're for real." "Really? Who's your student?" "It's the guy I invited, the first guy." Wow. I said, "Okay, welcome. Pick up a knife." He said, "What?" I said, "You might as well, man. We might as well cut right into it, bro. Pick up a knife. I'm sure you got a Tonto in that bag somewhere." He opens up the bag. He's got all them crazy weapons. You know how them guys do. They got everything. And he pulls out this, like what's his name? The Bowie, like a Bowie knife, right? He said, that's what he pulls out. My Uncle Mike is so nervous. He doesn't know what to do. Like, he thinks this guy's going to give me a beating. And I had this guy attack me, and I just let it go, man. Just let it go. This guy with all his rank just rubbed me the wrong way. And then I disarmed him. I flipped him like, you know how we do when we take a guy, dump him, pick him up, dump him, pick him up, dump him. I did it 3-4 times. I locked him up, and I took his knife away, cut his throat. And as soon as he got done, he went like this. I said, I backed up, and he went like this. He turned around, he got into Cecere, and he bowed to me. He went, "Master." My Uncle Mike almost had a heart attack watching that flurry because he thought the guy was going to give me a beating. He had no idea what I was capable of until that moment. And he said, "Holy mackerel, I had no idea you could do those things." I said, "Nobody does." From that point in time, I started getting some of the Marines started coming around to see me out there. So I finally got an apartment after like 3 weeks in right off of Laurel Canyon and Moore Park. There. And there's a corner, Moore Park is right on the corner there. I started teaching in between those 2 big trees. I had 1 or 2 guys. Next thing you know, people kept coming around. Next thing you know, I'm out there with 39 guys in geese. I brought out 36 puzzle mats. We used to carry them, put them all out. And we're just throwing around. Next thing you know, whoop, Benny Urquidez comes up with Eagle Woman. And he comes up and he goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, Benny." "Yes, sir." And he's like, "Where's your school?" I said, "You're standing in it." I said, who hasn't trained in the park before? He says, "Oh, look at all you guys." He says, "You should have a school." I said, I'm fine here. And he said, "If you ever want to bring your guys to school, I have Jet's gym right next to Gold's on Laurel Canyon." I said, "Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I really do." I said, "But I'm good, but thank you very much. Very humble." In my mind, I don't believe in sharing masters' philosophies because it's always going to be it's never going to work. Does that make sense?
Conflict, yeah.
Yeah.
So you've been teaching for a while.
I've been teaching for
Close to 40 years?
35 years.
35 years. And primarily jiu-jitsu.
I'm a jiu-jitsu guy.
You're a jiu-jitsu guy.
But I did 2 years with Benny Urquidez, doing stunt school and learning about his kick bites. I worked on his inside back kick. I snatched that and put it into ours. Some of Gene LaBelle's stuff. I dabbled with all the masters I could to get the feeling of what they were doing and what it was about. Then I studied, whenever I'm with Samuel Kwok, I work out with him constantly, and in Wing Chun. So now I noticed that there was one, like Samuel Kwok had this one move that when we were doing Chisao, and it's always pretty good, but there's one hit, he always gets me. And I said, man, nobody gets me all the time on this move. And I couldn't stop it. So then I analyzed it, and then I learned how to stop it, but then I incorporated it into my jiu-jitsu, and I showed the guys, I said, guys, do it this way, and they were like, wait. I said, no, that's the one that Samuel Kwok got me with. So now you got it. I said, now you got both sides. But that was a perfect example of, it took a master to find this hole that you didn't see, because you're so, you can protect yourself pretty good, but a master's gonna find his way through.
Yes.
And that's what Samuel Kwok did. He helped sharpen those holes. So when a student comes in, he's a blank sheet of paper. We try to find out if he's had any prior training. If he's had any prior training, usually he has some sort of dojo etiquette. If he's had no prior training, the very first thing we must teach him is the ABCs of being in a dojo, the respectful way. And then, like you may see a smaller guy and say, oh, he's gonna get picked on by bigger guys, or you may see somebody that's heavy, they're not gonna be able to dance around. So you can't teach everybody under a cookie cutter. And I think that cookie cutter training is good for like basic training in the military. Break you down, teach you basic training, basic moves, so that you can work as a formative unit as one doing these same basic moves. As an independent operator, you can't just be a cookie cutter because you're too predictable. So we find a strength and then try to make it stronger. We find a weakness, we try to make that stronger. And then we try to make him think about the blind sides of combat that you don't think about every day. And people say, well, what do you mean? Well, when we say situational awareness, right? And people think it's just, oh, I understand that, there's a couple of guys there and a couple of guys there, and I got to pay attention that they're there. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you got people around you and you don't know what's happening. You don't know, are you on a tile floor? Are you on grass? Or are you on asphalt? Or are you on cement? Is the floor, was it early in the morning? Is there dew? Was there a sprinkler on? What kind of shoes are you wearing? Or if you're on the grass, it's going to be like ice, tile, any kind of dew, or more, you're fighting on ice. These things you don't realize until a guy, all of a sudden it goes, and all of a sudden you're falling all over the place, and you can't realize why. So everything from, what a guy's wearing, who's with him, how much light, is there light behind me? What is closest to me to use as a weapon if I have to use something? So it's not just this one thing, it's this whole simulation going on of all these, because, it goes from 0 to 1,000 in 2 seconds. And the biggest thing that you have to, in my opinion, and my philosophy is, I tell my students, don't fight. Don't fight. Fighting is a last resort. No matter how much, when we talk and it sounds like this, I've lived a different kind of life. I had to fight. And I'm telling you, if you can walk away from it, walk away from it. Even if you have to humble yourself, put your head down, walk away from it. And you should be more afraid of what you're going to do to that guy than what the law is going to do to you afterwards, because you can't take it back.
Yeah.
Teaching students that they need to, so you teach them how to do something, but can they do it?
Yeah. And
will they do it? And like sometimes you teach women, say, well, do this, that, and the other thing, and say, well, I could never do that. Well, I assure you that the nicest grandmother in the world, if she was put in the right situation, would do things that even she wouldn't believe. So if a human being is at risk, they're going to do what they have to do. Now, either that person's going to do it to you, or you're going to prevent it. But, thinking you're going to call the police or look for help, most likely somebody's just going to videotape you and try to get more hits on YouTube from it.
Yep.
That's the society that we live in. So, first, spirituality. Try to be close to your God, whatever that is for you. Remember that you're a spiritual being living a physical life, not a physical person trying to lead a spiritual life. And as soon as you get that straightened out, everything looks different. And it starts to make sense. And all of a sudden, you're always trying to fight, but you don't have to fight because you're leaving the spiritual existence, and the door's already open for you. And you can't figure out why you didn't figure this out before. Why does it take so long to get it?
Because you got to live it.
Exactly. So I know when I hear people say, you hear a guy, he's a black belt at 14. You see, this one's he's a 10th degree black belt at 30. Please, you don't have enough time. I know in the promotion of ranks, they've made it into a monetary Ponzi, actually, if you will call, because when you sell rank, generally you're making money, but you're not doing justice to the student. Let's say, just for argument's sake, you take a kid that you promoted him to his black belt at 14, and he's a black belt at 14, and he locks in to a guy that's 25 and starts to fight the guy and gets whooped. You broke his mind, because he's not going to believe in himself ever. If he couldn't defend himself at a black belt level, he needs to go buy a gun. You don't realize what you're doing when you give a guy a rank that he can't fight. On our mats in jiu-jitsu, if you step on the mat with a rank, you better be able to defend that rank. And if you don't fight up to that rank, you're going to have a problem. Just old school. You want to be a businessman, that's quite all right. There's nothing wrong with being a businessman. There's many things wrong when you sacrifice truth for some suppositional pie in the sky that they're never gonna. I think that when you get overcomplicated, it never works. Overcomplicating any technique never works. I don't think that a technique that has more than 3 moves in it's going to work in a real street. It's a 1, 2, 3 takedown, 1, 2, 3 takedown. I teach in striking of threes, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, always 3. It could be succession of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but always in counts of 3. Grouping says, and nobody can win a fight without striking. There's no, you think you're going to wrestle a guy, he's so strong, and locks do not work without an atemi, okay? And the guys tell you, no, I can lock. No, you can't. Without striking the guy, people are too strong. You have to hit him, and you have to disable that arm so that you can actually put it into a lock or that particular body part. But simplistic, simple. It has to, you see it, hit, down, go home. I say to my students, if a guy engages you for real, and it's a real situation, and he's still standing 15 seconds after he engaged you, you need to go back to the school, because you're wasting time. And the guys say, well, what are these 3-minute rounds? I said, that's sports. You understand? You're mixing. This is why guys say to me, have you ever fought in the UFC? No. I could never fight in the UFC. I'm a guaranteed loser in the UFC because I get disqualified or I get killed, because there's no way in the world to fight those guys without, it's like telling a tiger, you're a tiger, but I'm not going to let you have claws and teeth. No, you're a pussycat. You're not a tiger anymore. You know, combat jiu-jitsu is meant to do one thing: stop aggression.
Right.
You know, and yes, there's a lot of good guys out there, but the mentality of a combatant versus the mentality of a sportsman is completely different. And a sportsman's thinking about points and sportsman behavior and all these things, and a combatant's just thinking, this guy's trying to take my life. This guy's trying to hurt me. He's trying to rob me. He's trying to carjack me. He's trying to hurt my wife. He's trying to hurt my kids. You know, bad people.
Yep.
People don't even remember that Japanese jiu-jitsu is a mother. When people say jiu-jitsu, they think BJJ is it. And I say, no, that's the daughter. The mother is Japanese jiu-jitsu, you know? And remember, the Japanese didn't teach everything.
Yeah.
They never teach everything. You might have to fight the guy someday.
So, Shihan, how can we contact you? And
So you can contact me on Facebook. AOSJ is my American Old School Jiu-Jitsu is the name of my methodology. Vince Cecere on Facebook. You can just befriend me. I have a Twitter, AOSJ, not Twitter, Instagram that we keep up. We have several events coming out. In June, we have Black Creek coming out, and I play the bartender Earl in Black Creek. It's the biggest martial arts Western made in a very long time. Cynthia Rothrock's brainchild, and she actually it was rated. Country Magazine did a write up on it, and it was best country movie of the year that it won. You know, Western, and it was like holy mackerel. And we did it in Arizona instead of Tombstone, you know, same thing, Mescal.
Mhm.
And we went to the red carpet in San Francisco, and in June it'll be released for streaming on Fandango and a couple of other streaming services, Apple TV. But that movie will be coming out in June, and if anyone knows, look who I'm talking to. Richard Norton's last performance. If anyone, you know, guys that are martial arts people know that Richard Norton is an absolute legend. He's an absolute prince, always has been an absolute prince. Very dear friend of Cynthia's. And they did Chen O'Brien back in the 80s, Chen O'Brien 2, and all these other films. And now he plays Sinclair, the bad guy in Black Creek, and he did one of his best performances ever. It was an acclaimed performance. Everybody talked about it. And that was his last role. He just passed away about 2 weeks ago. So, you know, our prayers are with his family and his wife, and just, you know, another light went out. And the guy was a great light, great representative of the martial arts. We had a phenomenal time. Many people on Black Creek died. We lost a lot of people after the movie was filmed.
wow.
So this will end up being like one of those movies everybody goes to see because it's the very last performance of so many people.
Yeah.
And then Grandmaster Ted Gambarella, he initiated the GOAT Awards, and it's in Texas in August, like August 13th. And the closest airport is like 7 hours away, I was told.
Oh.
It's like at a ranch down there. But literally, he just put this out, and I'm very honored to be part of this group of people. Benny's getting it, Don's getting it, and just overwhelmingly grateful.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you taking the time. I love the stories.
Thank you for doing everything that you do for the martial arts. I'm sure all of these people, these masters and these people who you gave a voice to or some time to, believe me, that's probably the highlight of their career.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming down. And we'll do many more.
Whatever you like, my
All
friend.
right, sir. Thank
All right.
you.